Welcome to another episode of Seeing Them Live, a podcast featuring memorable concert stories from live music fans. Everyone has a concert story, and hopefully, one day, we'll hear yours.
The other thing is that, Billy Bob's on stage and he's trying to make some jokes and trying to be funny and all, but unfortunately, his tone and his presence cinematically as such a badass is that it just made everybody nervous. People were not like, oh, that's funny. It was like, this guy might come down and punch me in the mouth.
Our guest today is Stephen Pitalo. Stephen is a music video historian and the creator of the Music Video Time Machine website, which includes his Music Video Time Machine magazine and a blog featuring insights on your favorite music videos from the 80s and 90s. Stephen describes this period as the golden age of music videos. You'll also find a list of his upcoming events there. Stephen frequently speaks on the history of music videos, and up until recently, DJ'd and hosted the Music Video Time Machine dance party in various clubs throughout New York City. Stephen is also a live music fan and has been to numerous concerts. Stephen, welcome to Seeing Them Live.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I like the podcast. It's always good to hear people's different concert stories.
Yeah, we're also joined today by my co-host and producer, Doug Florzak. And I just wanted to mention, Stephen, to everybody, that was a very brief bio. It goes back a ways to the beginning, but I encourage people to go to the website, Music Video Time Machine, and check out your bio, because you've done a lot of stuff, a lot of cool things. And we can touch on, we'll touch on some of that, and feel free to jump in and add whatever you like in that regard.
I've been very lucky to be able to do as many things as I have so far in my career, but, half of it's right place, right time, some of it's luck, but I've always enjoyed writing about music. So that's kind of been the jump off point.
Yeah. And you've got an extensive blog, interviews and such with artists and directors of music videos. So it's really a really cool site you have there. As is our tradition, Doug and I always like to start with, a few concerts you've been to, and then we'll chat about some of the things you've been up to and have done in the past. But your first concert you had mentioned was back in 1985. It was at a Ratt concert with Bon Jovi as the opening act, and you were 15 years old, and took place, I guess, at the Gulf Coast Coliseum in Mississippi. Want to chat about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi, and the Mississippi Gulf Coast Coliseum opened in, I think, maybe 79, 80, and it was a stop for most big arena rock bands and heavy metal bands, because it was halfway between New Orleans and Mobile, Alabama. So we got a lot of metal acts. I remember during the 80s, I saw a lot. I saw Motley, Crue, Whitesnake, all the bands that you would recall. But my first show was Ratt. It was August of 85. Bon Jovi was the opening band, and that was what was the most memorable was, and I still can see it as clearly as anything, John Bon Jovi up on a second level with an American flag wrapped around him, and he's like spinning around during, Tokyo Road or In and Out of Love or one of those ones off the 7800 Fahrenheit album. And you being the music fans that you are, I know that you obviously know that second album by Bon Jovi is called 7800 Fahrenheit, because that's the temperature at which you can melt rock. But they were actually shooting the music video for You're in Love there. And they did footage in Shreveport as well. So the band ended up only playing about 4 or 5 songs because they had to play You're in Love, I know, at least 2 or 3 times. And they kept resetting for the TV and stuff like that. So, but everybody knew that they were doing that. And so nobody was going, oh, I want to hear, this isn't what I came here for. Back then, of course, 1985, it was prime MTV time. So we were all really thrilled to be there for that.
Yeah, and you'd mentioned they were shooting a video, so I went and I watched that music video, and they don't show a whole lot of the crowd. It's like these fast pannings of the crowd, and I thought, I was expecting maybe more of the crowd to be featured than there was.
You have to kind of think about where they were. This was really only their second album. The first album was, Ratt was Round and Round, Back for More, and I think Wanted Man were all off of that first album, Out of the Cellar. This album was Invasion of Your Privacy, and they had already had a big hit with Lay It Down. So that was the song that they were touring on at the moment. So I guess they decided they wanted to do something a little bit more supportive of the live show so that people would come out to see them. And I mean, they were great. Warren DeMartini is a very underrated guitar player. So it was great to see him playing. I'm not absolutely sure that the drummer's name, Bobby Blotzer, is an actual name, but if I was going to make one up, I think it might be Bobby Blotzer.
That's a good one. Yeah, I had mentioned I had a brief Ratt encounter when I was working. I was at a trade show, staying at a hotel in Dallas, in Texas, and I get on the elevator with a work colleague, and we write it down. And there's these rock and roll guys in the elevator, but I didn't recognize them. And the doors open, and we get out, and he's like, "Do you know who that was?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "It was a Ratt." And I'm like, "Oh my God," I had no idea, but they were in town playing like a venue. This was in 1999, Starplex Amphitheater. I did a little research. I think that's when this happened. So yeah, it was my brief brush that I didn't even know was happening at the time with Ratt.
Well, to that end, if you ever get a chance to hear Henry Rollins, one of his stand-up performances, he has a whole block about going to see Ratt. And I think it was maybe far after they were headlining. I think it was at a small club or something like that. And it is just beautiful. His description of the band and the banter and everything, it's really, really great. I saw him do it live actually at the Westbeth Theater up here, but it's worth seeking out.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to check that out. So I would imagine you were just a fan at that time. But did that inspire you or get the spark to your interest in music videos at that time, with kind of your being like a part of that live video?
That makes a really good narrative, but no, I was just a teenager at the time. I was very lucky that my junior high school and college years are exactly 80 to 90. And so that was such a wonderful period of time for popular music and a huge time for MTV. So I think it probably, put a little something in my mind, but at that point, I was watching MTV all the time, just like every other teenager, but it did make it interesting, later on to kind of look back and try to find out about some of these music videos. I was able to actually talk to Marshall Burrell, who is Milton Berle's son, who directed a bunch of the Ratt videos. So that was fun to talk to him about that.
You'd mentioned either, and we'll talk about this in more detail, the MTV panel, or maybe it was your recording of your talk you did on the music video history, where you're in the process of writing a book that I think what features the directors of these music videos and such that you've been interviewing for a book.
Yes. Yeah. I've been working on this project for a really long time. And initially I had been working as a broadcast producer for an advertising agency, and we were looking for directors for a specific commercial. One of the reels that came in had a bunch of music videos on it for this particular director. He had done those as well. And it turned out to be Nigel Dick. And Nigel is a very, very, very prolific director. And what was interesting was when I got him to talk a little bit about it, he had a very unique perspective and a unique career that actually crossed into all these other areas. He was originally a PR person for Stiff Records, working for Dave Robinson in the UK back in the very early 80s, late 70s. So he got to see all those videos that they shot for Madness and for Tracy Ullman's You Don't Know and stuff like that. And then later he became a director on his own. And he calls himself a bricklayer, a utilitarian type video director. So he said he never turned down a job ever. And it's completely believable because you look at this entire thing. So just from the numbers and the ratios, he had some hits. And those hits were the trilogy of Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Shout, and Head Over Heels, which were all top 10 hits. And then he shot the videos for Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine, and Paradise City. And then later on, he shot Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby One More Time. So he had this great sort of career, and he didn't mind just kind of hanging out a little bit and talking about it, because we eventually decided to hire him to shoot this commercial for a Broadway show. And it was great. And I started thinking about the fact that I didn't think there was a resource anywhere that had interviews with the directors of these videos. And I was right. I mean, there was a few things here and there, John Landis, who directed Thriller, and a few, but mostly not. So I actually got talking to a specific video director named Brian Grant, who shot different videos for Whitney Houston and Duran. And it turns out that he knew all of these other people. And then once I talked to him and I talked to a few of the more notable ones, everybody else was okay with talking to me. So now I'm up to about 100 music video director interviews.
Wow.
What's fascinating is I've also gotten a chance to interview a lot of the bands about what it was like. I mean, most recently, I interviewed Ian Dench from EMF, and I'm putting together the interview from that about, because he was in EMF and they're coming back to the States for the first time in 30 years to do some concerts. So yes, I'd have to say that getting to talk to those guys really put things in perspective. And it made me come up with the idea of the golden age of music video, because all these guys were shooting those videos, and people talk about MTV being a huge phenomenon and all, that's great, but it's just the delivery system for all of this. Somebody had to make those videos. Somebody had to start working toward this being a little bit more than a performance piece. And once there were some good concepts, and pretty soon the marketing people saw that if you were on MTV and no matter what it was, you were going to sell some records, they started loosening up the reins a little bit for the creativity to flow, because they didn't know what would work. They just knew if you were on the air and it, quote, looked cool, then you would sell some records. So these directors had a free hand for a certain period of time. And if you got a hit, then all these other people would come to you and say, hey, can you make one like that for us? And, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But at the end, most of these directors just said to me, the thing that they had in common was that they never had enough money and they never had enough time. But over the course of their career, they never had more fun doing anything like they did when they were making these music videos, because it was just, you had a creative free hand. Somebody call you up, hey, I need you to make, when you think about it as an independent filmmaking, if you frame it that way, this guy's giving you $30,000 to go and shoot a 3-minute film that you don't even have to worry about the sound on.
Yeah.
What an amazing opportunity. Yeah, it's been fascinating to talk to all these guys. And so when the pandemic hit, I decided to just put out a magazine with all these interviews in it, and to grab some photos and pull in some interviews from some bands. And that's how Music Video Time Machine, the magazine, was launched.
Yeah, no, that I thought that was a really interesting angle, interviewing the directors of the videos and their interaction with the bands. And like you said, some of the bands, their input on what that was like. Yeah, it sounds like an interesting topic to write a book around. So looking forward to that. Any idea when that project might be finished?
No, I don't. I'm still actually in the process of trying to figure out how this is best structured, because I've tried, trying to do a chronological through line of it, but that doesn't necessarily give justice to all of the videos and all the stories that I've gotten. So it might end up being sort of an encyclopedia of these clips. But to tell you the truth, I've been working on this thing for, over a decade, and I still don't know exactly what it is, but it's one of those things where I know there's value in collecting the information on the front end.
Yeah, I could kind of, in my head, I'm picturing almost like a family tree or a flow chart of, all of these people are connected and, throughout that whole process of shooting the video and who they interacted with. Yeah, I would imagine there's a lot there, but yeah, an encyclopedia would be an interesting approach to that.
Or I guess what you could call an omnibus.
Okay, I wanted to talk about a couple more concerts that you had mentioned, or maybe a few here. The Joey Ramone concert at Tramps in New York City as your most surprising. So there was a special guest that played there as well that night.
What was great about that was Joey Ramone. The Ramones weren't playing together anymore, so it was Joey Ramone and the Independents, which was just sort of a showcase for him to do whatever songs he wanted and to throw in some Ramones as well. He had also recently produced an album by Ronnie Spector. So Ronnie Spector shows up and does some songs with him, which is, that's the ticket right there. It's incredible. But also on the bill were the Dictators, who were incredible. This very, very underrated band from the era called the Pristines. They were sort of guttural punk, but with girl group melodies and girl group voices. It was incredible. They were on a label called Almo Sounds, but I think Garbage was on that album, on that label, and so I think they got all the attention. But it's worth looking up on the Pristines. They did an album called Scandal, Controversy, and Romance, and it's fantastic. They do a cover of David Bowie's Sorrow, which I think is actually a cover of somebody else, but they do that, and they do a cover of Reckless Eric's The Whole Wide World, but amazing. Anyway, they played, the Dictators played, and then, there's people like, there's going to be a special guest, and so there's all these rumblings about who it could be, and then the lights go down, and people start screaming, the lights come up, and it's Blondie. So they're like roaring, and they're playing Dreaming. That's like the first thing out of the gate. And there's Debbie in full sunglasses and just like, going at it. It was an amazing, amazing show. I still have the ticket. Still have most of the tickets of all the stuff that I saw, but that was fantastic. And I missed that venue too, Tramps. It was kind of a club atmosphere, a little bit smaller than Bowery Ballroom, I would say. But those places like that don't really exist in New York anymore. There used to be Tramps, Brownies, Continental Club, and Coney Island High, which Jesse Malin ran. We had all these great bands that had come through and play there. Then again, I'm much older now, so all the new places that they would be playing, I really don't know anyway.
And how long had you been in New York City at that point when you saw this show?
I moved in 1995, so that was, I want to say,
I think you had it down as 1998.
Yeah, 98. I actually have an advertisement on the wall that has a calendar of all the things, all the people that were playing there that month, and it's just unbelievable, the people that they had. Among the people that were there that month were Joe Ely, Steve Earle, Fun-Loving Criminals, different members of the Meters played there, George Porter. Dixie Chicks, weirdly enough, were playing there, I guess, before they really made it big. Bad Manners, you might remember from the UK. And one of my favorite shows, Morris Day and the Time, played there. And it was, he is a showman extraordinaire.
I love Morris Day. He's great.
Oh, man. And still out there doing it. So, yeah, more power to Morris. I remember a moment in the show where he says, I'm going to take a moment now to talk about one of my favorite subjects, me.
That was the golden age of maybe those clubs, huh? It's even like, same kind of thing.
Probably.
But then you had mentioned a Prince concert that you went to in 2004 as your best concert. And I've talked to people who've seen Prince, and I never did see Prince live. I wish I did, but they all say what a fantastic show it was. usually like one of the best concerts they've ever been to. But what was kind of interesting, you mentioned there was he played all the hits, and there was like this acoustic set sandwich between the two electric performances. So if you wanted to comment on that, like what that was like or how that was, structured.
Well, I think if you want to see it on YouTube, it's fairly available, but I think they have it in a smaller area. What they did in the Coast Coliseum was he sat in a chair with an acoustic guitar, and it was on some sort of contraption, and it just moved up in the air. And I don't know how high he was, but it was high because everybody was amazed that he was going to, play from that high up in the air. And it was fantastic. And he played Cream, an acoustic version of that. He played, gosh, what else did he play? I think he played a Rufus song, maybe a Sweet Thing or something like that. But what I found to be amazing was the energy just never stopped. He would sometimes stay on stage and play and the whole rest of the band would go, rest. And then they would come back and, but it was incredible. I want to say it was the third encore that he comes out and sits down at the piano and starts playing the beautiful ones from Purple Rain. And I think the roof just blew off of the place. It was just incredible. So yeah, that's probably the greatest show I've ever seen. On another occasion, I was lucky enough to go to one of those Prince shows that's after the show in New York. I was there. I stayed for 3 songs, but it was 4:00 in the morning, and I just had to go home because I had to go to work the next day.
Oh my goodness!
Played "Motherless Child," which was a Richie Havens song, I think, and he played "Alphabet Street," and he played one other cover. But he was in town supporting the Larry Graham album that I believe he had produced, and so Larry Graham was there on stage with him. Larry Graham being the former bass player for Sly and the Family Stone.
Okay.
So that was wild to see and to be that close to see him.
Yeah, that sounds like a really special once in a lifetime thing there.
Let me also just say what it reminds me of is that I've only gotten to go to a few of those little things before. Cheap Trick did a secret show at CBGB's, and it was like 2001, I want to say, maybe 98, maybe 99. I'm not sure. Their music for Hangovers album had come out. We went, and there was it was one of those, it's a tiny place, and there's Cheap Trick right there. And it was amazing. It was incredible. And that's one of the bands I've seen the most in my life, Cheap Trick. They just never disappoint. So yeah, that was special too.
Moving from special to we'll say not so special, or maybe disappointing, was this Billy Bob Thornton band, the Boxmasters.
Mm.
And it was a free show, I guess you were saying, and but I read online some stuff about his performances, and I think he offended the entire country of Canada. Some comments he made it warming up for opening for Willie Nelson. But what was your experience like with that?
Well, I'm at the point in my life, in my career, where I find it very difficult to criticize or downgrade anybody who's making an effort out there to make music, to do what they want to do. But Billy Bob Thornton is a very, very talented man, just not in this arena. My wife and I went. It was at a casino. It was for free, and people started leaving almost immediately. The prowess of the band was not even as good as a high school talent show. I'm sorry. But what was disappointing, though, was that one of the guys in the band was Teddy Andreas, who's Teddy Zigzag, who played harmonica on Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion album. He's the harmonica on Bad Obsession, So I think he was still with the band at that moment, and now that I think about it, I'm not absolutely sure he was. The other thing is that Billy Bob's on stage and he's trying to make some jokes and trying to be funny and all, but unfortunately his tone and his presence cinematically as such a badass is that it just made everybody nervous. People were not like, oh, that's funny. It was like, this guy might come down and punch me in the mouth. I mean, the Boxmasters have been around for a long time now. And I really expected something a little bit better than what I saw. When you're playing a show for free and people are walking out, that should be a signal to you that maybe either practice more or something. But yeah, it was not a good experience. And I was really rooting for him too. I really wanted it to be good, but it just wasn't in the cards.
Till you had mentioned that. I think I knew he was in a band or at one time, but yeah, like you said, they've been around for a long time. So yeah, that was new to me. I thought we could switch gears a little bit here, Stephen, and just maybe get into some of the things you list on your music video time machine on the website. There's this great clip, oh my God, of you in this VH1. It was a game show, right? Name That Video.
Right.
And I was thinking, man, they got the wrong guy, or in your case, the right show for this, because he's gonna crush this. I was wondering, like, how did you become a contestant to start with?
Well, my best friend, Andy, called me one day and said, I just did this thing to be a contestant on Name That Video. They asked me some questions and all. And you really ought to call these people and do this because I think you would just kill it. And so, I got the number, I called them and they said, sure, we're looking for contestants. And they asked me some questions and they called me back and they asked me some more questions and they called me back and they said, are you free on this particular day? And I said, sure. So I went to the studios. VJ Karen Bryant was the host, and it was set up just like Name That Video. I mean, just like Name That Tune, the old Ron Ely hosted version, which I recall. So the first thing was they would ask a question. There was 3 of us, and you had to accumulate points for answering the question. Sometimes you had to complete the lyric or something like that. And I won that round. And then it was myself versus another guy. And it was, I can name that video in blank seconds, and we went back and forth, and the clues were pretty easy for me. Like, as I recall, one of them very specifically was Atlanta astronomy. And I instantly knew that was the Georgia satellites.
Okay.
I mean, that's easy. So I basically it was kind of a dirty thing to do, but I said, I can name that video in 1 second, and the guy was like, oh, okay, I name that, or 0 seconds or something like that. And I got that one. And then I get to the end. And the end is they show music videos on a screen. You have to name the artist and the song. And then they go to the next one. And if you do 10 of them in 60 seconds, you win the grand prize. And they were easy. It was like, Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper and Keeping the Faith by Billy Joel. And they were pretty easy. The very last one, actually, I think Foo Fighters was the one I got on.
When I was watching, I'm yelling, Foo Fighters, Foo Fighters.
And I had stopped myself because
you knew the song.
Well, right, Learn to Fly, and I knew it was Foo Fighters, but Goo Goo Dolls was like about to come out of my mouth. And I was like, that's wrong, in my head. I was like, pass.
Yeah.
But the funniest part of this is that, to me, is that the very last song was Sarah McLachlan, I Will Remember You. The only reason I knew that song was my girlfriend at the time who would just play it all the time. It's like, oh God, I hate this song. So luckily, that worked out. And I won a Toyota 4x4 and with a really great sound system.
Yes.
And this is kind of a sign of the times because it was in 2001. I won Rolling Stone magazine's 100 greatest albums of rock and roll on CD.
Yeah. That was a good haul at the time. I mean, I'm like, wow, that's not bad.
It worked out well. It was funny. I had to go to Tower Records and with a list, and they were like, all right, we walked around, and I think they were missing like 6 of them, so they had to special order it. But Yeah, it was great. And, I was lucky. It's a nice thing to add to the resume considering the stuff that I was writing about.
Yeah, yeah, it totally fits, and yeah, it's a great clip to check out. So people should definitely take a look at that.
I just want to mention it. I know it says it in my bio, but I want to mention that I sold the car back to the dealership and I paid off my student loans with the money.
Nice, nice. Yeah,
Uh,
that I would imagine that was a pretty expensive vehicle back then, or even currently.
but to be honest, it was about $35,000.
Yeah, so not bad for naming 10 videos, right?
And believe me, it's nice to be able to tell your parents that you paid off your student loans by doing something that like watching TV and watching MTV a lot.
See if you add up all the hours there. It was like your part-time job, right? You're going to a good cause. Then also on your website you have this. It's a longer video of the MTV 40th anniversary. You put this panel together, and I was just wondering, how did that all come about? Getting that together. It was at Comic-Con in New York, right?
Right. I had done a few presentations and a few panels as part of Comic-Con's. They had sort of an adjacent pop culture thing that they were doing, and I got to know some of the people with Reed Pop, the people who produced Comic-Con, and it was coming around. And to be honest, you have to get your panel information in very early. And I knew it was coming up. I knew that the anniversary was going to be, in 2021. So I said, I'm a music video historian. MTV's 40th anniversary is coming out. This would be a big deal. And they wanted to know who would be on the panel. And so I just had kind of a dream list that I put forth as booked, and they were not. So we got the panel first. And then because as I found out later, they'll come back to you and they say, okay, can you confirm this? And if you have replacements, that they say, well, who are your replacements for that? And so they don't cancel it. They just, you have to still follow through. Depending on, if it was the Godfather anniversary and Al Pacino is supposed to be there and then he's not, obviously that's probably going to get canceled. But this, they were a little bit okay with. So I was able to get John Sykes, who was the former president of MTV in the 1980s. I got Karen Duffy, who was VJ known as Duff in the 1990s, who I got just from a cold call email. And she was just wonderful. She's such a lovely person. And she said, I'm on board. Let's do it. And then, as luck would have it, I got one of the members of Naughty by Nature, who are known for their songs OPP and Hip Hop Hooray, Vinnie Brown. And he came out and it was great. And then I said, well, I need one of the directors because I've been talking to these guys forever. So I got Tim Newman, who directed music videos for many people, but he's most famous for the ZZ Top trilogy of Sharp Dressed Man, Give Me All Your Lovin', and Legs. So he would be able to talk about, that era and those. And so I got them all and we did it. And, it went over really big. And what was good enough that the next year we did something called Where Were You in 92?
Mm-hmm.
And Karen Duffy came back and talked some more. I had directors Rich Murray and Paul Rockman, who had done music videos for Spin Doctors, Criss Cross, Alice in Chains, all these great ones. And so we were able to do that in 92 as well.
Yeah, I thought it was a great discussion and presentation. And one other question I had, Stephen, was you'd mentioned this list of people. Were there, I guess, some people that couldn't make it or you wanted to add to the panel? Because although it's like an hour presentation, it seemed like that was a pretty good number of people and kind of filled up that discussion. I thought kind of completed it, but I was just wondering if there was like maybe one other person or somebody you wanted.
To be honest, I thought that an hour wasn't actually going to be enough time to do everything that we wanted to do. And I'm not even sure, is it an hour and a half? Because it's like, it might be a little bit longer. But the point being is that I wanted a chance for everybody to contribute and to talk and to have Q&A and stuff like that. And so it's surprising when you have 4 people on a panel, how fast the time can go. But to your point, at the very beginning, I reached out to a lot of people and I just didn't hear back from many of them. But the one person who did try to make it and then could not get the logistics together was Dee Snider. And he was very nice, very sweet. His people were like, we really want to be a part of this, but we just can't make it work. And so I look forward to doing something with him, maybe in the future and all. To speak to that for a second though, We're Not Gonna Take It video and I Wanna Rock were videos that the director, Marty Callner, talked to me about. And they were kind of, they were cartoony and they were silly. And the kid who's in the videos is his son, Dax Callner, who, as a friend of a friend, I got to talk to about doing those videos and about the process and stuff. And it was one of those ones where he was showing the other kids who were auditioning how to do it. And finally his dad said, why don't you just do it? But he said that Dee Snider became a lifelong friend and mentor and a big influence on him because, I don't know if you know a lot about Dee, but he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke. He's a very straight-laced person. And he said, told Dax, whatever you want, you've really got to work hard at it. You can't get distracted and you got to, and Dax said that made a big difference in his life. So get another one of these wild stories that happen.
Yeah, I thought it was a great panel that you put together, and the presentation I found it very interesting. Yeah, you mentioned it goes by fast. It goes by fast when you're listening to it too. I kind of wanted a bit more if possible, but that was great. And then you mentioned the golden age, which from your website I think you put it at like 1976 to 1994, the golden age of music videos. Beyond that, Stephen, what is there a definition you have of what, I know you talked about a little earlier about, the directors just getting to work on these projects, these 3-minute projects, but is there anything else that kind of defines that beyond that?
Well, I said it at 76 and 94 because 1976 was when Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen ended up airing on the BBC. And there are many directors that told me that was kind of a moment that they saw that type of thing being a larger creative idea for a music video. Some of them said it's like the musicians who say they saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. These UK directors saw Bohemian Rhapsody and saw, it was a very simple video. But because Bohemian Rhapsody is basically 3 different kinds of songs all stuck together, it needed something different to portray it. And I was lucky enough to talk to the director, Bruce Gowers, about shooting it. And all of the special effects, the wipes and the thing are all done in camera, basically. He said that they took maybe a half a day to shoot the whole thing, to tell you the truth. I said it at the beginning of that. And then, of course, MTV launches on August 1st, 1981. It's got a lot of videos that are performance-based. It's got, a few different ones here and there. Very important to note, Rod Stewart, 11 different music videos airing on MTV from the first day. Because Rod Stewart, he's always ahead of everybody. He never gets enough credit for being way ahead. But by the time we get to 1994, it's a full-blown industry. It's a different world than it was before. We've got the largely bloated trilogy of videos from Guns N' Roses for Don't Cry, Estranged, and November Rain, which end up costing over $1 million and still don't make any sense. The director, Andy Morahan, told me, I still don't know what it means. I still don't know what any of those videos mean that we shot. But something he did do was that when it was over, he felt like he had not captured what Guns N' Roses is, the down and dirty, punk-inspired hard rock band. And so he did a video, and you can find it on YouTube, called In the Garden of Eden. And it's just a locked off camera with them doing the song hyperactively. And it is down and dirty and very basic, and actually a throwback to when it was just performance videos. And so I thought it was an interesting kind of loop back around that to get to the essence of a band, he had to shoot what would have been their video back in 1976.
That's interesting. And then your cutoff date is 1994. Is there?
Well, that's when that last one was. Yeah.
Okay.
There were a few other things going on there too, because I think the Avid video editing system had come out, and so things were getting easier to do. And also, by then you started getting some reality TV established, and so MTV was kind of moving away from its 24-hour music videos idea. Things were just different, completely different, and never were the same again, actually.
Yeah, and that kind of segues into my other question here. Where do you see like today's music videos? Because I think I sent you that link to that Fontaines DC, their new song Starburster. That's pretty involved video, lots of imagery and such. And are there fewer music videos, or just because the platform is like, I would guess YouTube now, it's just different? Or what's your take on that?
I think it's complicated, but I do think that because the internet world is so fractured and disparate, that it's needle in a haystack type stuff, or as friends might say, the sea of crap. Because, there used to be, okay, and some would say it's better that there are no guardians at the gate now for this type of stuff. You sent you try to get your video on MTV. They would say yes, or they would say no, and then you would, whatever. Now you make anything, you upload it. Doesn't matter if it was any good or not. It's still up there. So it's just, everything is just so different, that it used to be. But I still try to follow some of the bands that I used to follow, and some of their stuff that they put out is fairly interesting, I think. But I did watch that Fontaines video, and it's got some connective tissue to a lot of videos that I've seen before, but I do like some of the mask imagery. I like the production value of being outside with the windmills, because it reminded me when I interviewed Lindsay Clennell, and he directed many music videos, but most notably In a Big Country by Big Country, where they're on all-terrain vehicles riding across the English pasture. And he said, one of the great things about being in the UK is when you don't have any budget, you can always drive out and it's a beautiful countryside somewhere and you can shoot that,
Yeah.
that's something. So his access, Fontaine's access to that windmill is just a great idea, and sometimes that's all you need is a great idea. But I think some music videos, and I don't know if this is one for you, but I think there was this period of time where MTV created a mythos of, you would watch the video and it didn't make any sense. So there was this conceit that MTV knew what was going on and you, the viewer, do not. So I think there became this thing of, if I make a music video, I really don't have to make it make any sense, because they don't have to make sense, and I don't even have to explain it. I just have to put a bunch of stuff up there, and this and that, and it might mean something, it might not mean something, whatever. Only the Fontaines and the songwriters know if this song has any connection to this video, and if it means anything. There are some that obviously do mean something. Childish Gambino's This Is America, that's connected. That's definitely what they're trying to do there. But there's a lot of them out there that don't make any sense. I challenged the director, Brian Grant. What does the video for Peter Gabriel's Shock the Monkey, what is going on? He's got three little people in suits jumped up on him, and he didn't really have much of an answer. Some of that had to do with the duality of man or something like that, flipping a coin. But most of the time, there isn't a through line for some of that stuff. And I think nowadays, a lot of it is sloppy and there's not a lot of care to it, because there's no standard for uploading something anymore.
Okay.
But the other side of that, of course, is the democratization of media allows people who have creativity and have voices to release things and try to connect with an audience. And that's great. But the democratization of anything that's creative you end up with 99% crap because, I'm sure you've heard this before. They're like, everybody has a story to tell. Well, maybe, but not everybody is a storyteller.
Right, right.
I have relatives that they go, let me tell you what happened the other night. I'm like, God, I got to listen to this story. I'm going to blow my brains out because I know how it's going to go. It's going to go badly. So, there you go. When there's nobody, watching the store and it's out of control, bad things happen.
Stephen, I was looking at your bio, and there's a period where you were working for Serrano Coin Incorporated, and you produced a lot of radio commercials that included some really well-known talent, people like Gladys Knight, Rosie O'Donnell, Jerry Orbach, Dick Cavett, Elton John, Tony Braxton, Judd Hirsch. I was wondering if there are any stories from that production work that you did that you could share with us.
I think maybe my favorite one was that we were doing radio spots for Thoroughly Modern Millie, the musical. And we got Jerry Orbach to come in and do the voiceover for it because Thoroughly Modern Millie is based in New York. And it's a big New York set musical. And Jerry Orbach didn't really do much with Broadway anymore. He was basically known as Lenny Briscoe on Law and Order and, continued to do that. But he wanted to have his foot in it somehow. And so he continued to do voiceovers. So he comes in and, I got to work with him, I'd say less than 10 sessions or so, but it was enough that we knew each other. And those were great. And the two things that he showed me was that, because one time I said, you've been playing Lenny Briscoe forever. How do you keep it still interesting, every time? He goes, well, for one thing, I never learned my lines. What? He goes, no, look. And he showed me what's called sides, which is basically the script. And he's like, he's got it shrunk down kind of small. And he said, and basically, I can just read it. I have a sort of a photographic memory. But before I get to the set, I don't know what the other person looks like a lot of the time. I don't know what the blocking is, where we're going to be, and so I learn it there and it keeps it all kind of fresh at the same time. I thought that was just fascinating. And the other thing he told me that keeps him sane was he convinced himself a while back that the acting is free. They're paying me to sit around and wait.
That's a good one.
And he said, and that's what I do most of the time, sitting around and waiting. So that's maybe my favorite. I mean, everybody that I worked with was very kind and very patient, very nice. Gladys Knight was just so sweet, just a really, really sweet person. And that meant a lot because my parents are big soul music fans. So getting to tell my mom that I worked with Gladys Knight was nice.
So I also saw that you yourself are, or at least were, a musician. You played in a punk band, the Knuckle Sandwiches, I believe. So were you a singer? Did you play an instrument? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
I don't have the confidence to say that I was a singer. I think I'll just go with frontman. And the Knuckle Sandwiches was a band that my friend Andy, who I mentioned earlier, put together. Basically, he was getting divorced. I was still single, and we just had never done it. And we were like, let's put together a band. Let's just do this before we're too old to do it. And so we put it together. One of my roommates at the time was a guitar player, and a guy that I worked with was a drummer. And so we started writing songs. The songs that I wrote were very bad at first. And then we got an opportunity to play a gig called Classic Albums Night, where they had you learn a whole album by a famous artist, and you play the whole thing. And so we went with the Ramones' second album, Leave Home. So we had to learn the whole album all the way through. It seems like it would be easy because it ends up being less than 25 minutes, I think. But the Ramones is very, very specific. And, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's tough. And it changed our sound. Basically, when we started writing more stuff, I mean, I ended up writing a song called Granny is a Crackhead. And it's a Ramones song. It really sounds like that. But we ended up playing for about 2 years. And I still have all the live tracks, and I think maybe for the 20th or the 25th anniversary, I'm going to put together a record store day vinyl only release of some kind. But among the great venues that we got to play were the Pussycat Lounge in downtown. We played Hank's. Oh, and we played CBGB's once. So that was like a real landmark for us getting to do that. We also played a women's roller derby party. We played a crawfish festival in New Jersey. Yeah, it was a fun time. It was great. Yeah. The Knuckle sandwiches. We even had a little 4-song EP for a little bit, but that's out of print. Yeah. It's one of those things that you cross it off your bucket list.
Nice. Also, I read you've done so many things. We could go on forever, but you yourself produce albums now and develop talent with your company, Pack Rat Planet. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience?
Well, that's just sort of a banner that's sort of over all the different things, Music Video Time Machine magazine. I produced dance parties for quite a while as a DJ and a VJ, but it's also for those presentations and talks that I've been doing as well. And then, like I said, I produced an album for an artist named Scott Niolette, who I knew. He had an album that he wanted to do called Clearing the Debris after his home was destroyed in Hurricane Katrina. And he had all these songs that he wanted to do. And so we put that together. So Pack Rat Planet was originally Pack Rat NYC. And I started producing things through that. But now, I wanted to expand it and be able to do something a little bit larger. So I've been able to do events in many different cities and produce content and produce events within film festivals and within music video festivals and things like that. So that's what that's about. It's sort of a catch-all. And it's also, the place where I can sell all the t-shirts. Strangely, very recently, somebody sent me a TikTok with me in it that had footage from 1994 where I'm talking to someone at the college library about the internet and asking, hey, can I look up these REM lyrics? So I get all this stuff from all these people. They're like, hey, man, is that you? And it's like, yeah, that's me. And I was wearing a t-shirt from a band called Lap Daddy that I made up at the time. And people were like, we're going to get a Lap Daddy shirt. Like, give me 2 hours. Get all the ones you want. So weirdly enough, I sold a bunch of Lap Daddy t-shirts because of a TikTok that I had no involvement in.
It sells itself.
I'd like to think so.
When you were writing entertainment pieces, you interviewed a lot of famous artists, Joan Jett, the Ramones, Henry Rollins, Rick Springfield, and so on. I was particularly drawn to when you said you interviewed Joan Jett. A couple of weeks ago, we had an artist by the name of Zuzu Mansour who plays in a band called Soraia. Her band has played opening for Joan Jett a number of times, and she's identified sort of as a similar to Joan Jett in a lot of ways. And so I was wondering if you were familiar with her in Soraia and if you had any comments on that.
Only that I listened to that episode, and she sounds like she's definitely got the same soul as Joan when it comes to I was lucky enough to interview her. I didn't, we didn't talk for all that long. But something that I found interesting that I had not heard before was that she told me before she decided to get a band together and try to do that, she actually thought about going into the Army. And I was like, what? Well, how, she's like, I don't know. I was just a little lost. And the other thing I asked her was, what's the one thing that people get wrong about you regularly? She said that I'm intimidating. I mean, I don't think I'm intimidating. How can I be intimidating when I'm this tall?
You said you had an interesting story, Stephen, about the director of, was it the David Bowie movie?
Oh, before he passed away, I was lucky enough to interview D.A. Pennebaker.
Okay.
Who is a noted documentarian, but most famous for shooting Bob Dylan's Don't Look Back movie, which contains the famous Subterranean Homesick Blues clip with the signs and stuff. He also directed the Ziggy Stardust movie, and he directed Monterey Pop. So he told me that there's a moment in Ziggy Stardust at the end where David Bowie announces that this is the last time that they're going to play. meaning, the last time they're going to play as Ziggy Stardust and Spiders from Mars. And so DA is on stage way in the back. He's shooting from the back angle while somebody else is shooting the stage. And so he's right behind some of the musicians, and he's actually very close to Mick Ronson, the main guitar player. And so he hears when David Bowie says, "And this is the last time we'll be playing ever. Thank you. Good night." And he hears Mick Ronson go, "Oh, shit."
He didn't get the memo.
No, I guess he didn't tell anybody. So I thought that was a funny moment,
Yeah, that's quite a surprise if you're on stage in the band to hear that. Well, Stephen, we really appreciate taking the time to chat with us. It's been really fascinating, just the whole perspective from the music videos and the directors and such. Is there anything you'd like to plug or chat about before we sign off here?
Well, people can check me out on Instagram. Music Video Time Machine is right up there. I'm continuing to write things for the blog and put more content together. I'm going to have much more video content coming up with interviews that I've done with musicians and directors. It's just a matter of putting it together on the right platform and getting it out there so people can look forward to that. Besides that, I just hope everybody has a good summer. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this has been great. We'll keep our ears and eyes open to what you're up to, and maybe we do a part 2 sometime.
That sounds good to me. Just make it better than Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Oh, all right. With that, Stephen, it's been great, and we'll talk to you sometime soon.
Sounds good. Take care, guys.
That's a wrap for our show. I want to thank today's guests for sharing their concert stories with us. Make sure to check out our show notes at seeingthemlive.com for links to websites, photos, and other artifacts mentioned in the show. I also want to thank my producer, Doug Florzak. The theme music for the show was composed by Doug and is featured on his album, Flagstone. If you have a concert story you'd like to share on our podcast, please visit our website and click on Become a Guest in the main menu. Then fill out the form and click the Submit button. If you seem like a good fit for the show, we'll contact you via email. I guess it's time to head for the exits. We'll see you next time on Seeing Them Live.